unfortunately 47 out of 47. All of you that are here, including Sesson to my right, that not a single county is dedicating the threshold of 30% to development. The figure is actually dropping due to the same mistakes that were made by the national government. We are beginning to see it in counties. Growing size of recurrent and shrinking in development vote. The reason I asked that question in line with your borrowing policy is that how national government got us into the mess that we are in today as a country is inability to manage your expenses, and because you have political promises to keep, you go and borrow to appear as if you're doing something and you're not prudently managing your finances. If we open this window, what is the assurance that we get from you, Chair, and your members, that there is something that you're doing at governance level to try and comply with that regulation? And like I mentioned, the report from COB on 21-22 and 22-23, the financial year that we've just closed, shows a decline in almost all the counties, which is a worrying trend, because counties are about to go the same direction national government went.
Thank you very much. Please just answer Honorable Cheriot, then you can proceed after that, with the rest of the questions.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I will answer briefly, and then I will give my colleague, Vice Chair, to also chip in. I'll start with the issue of how do we intend to ring fence. Borrowing is a normal part of every government financial process. There is no government in the world that doesn't have a debt. I think what it is that jeopardizes any country is the extent to which you borrow. Many of them measure borrowing on the basis of their GDP. This country recently have resulted to cap our limits and not deal with the GDP issues for reasons, I guess, as advised by the National Treasury, who are the ones responsible for monetary and economic policy. Now, what we're saying is this. When counties make requests for resources to carry out our functions, year on, what happens is that we are usually given the excuse that the reason we cannot increase your resources to be able to do the functions that you're asking is because this is the only amount we have, because we are having to borrow this much to pay our debt. Now, every budget making process considers two items to fund the budget. One is revenue, the other one is the borrowing to fund the gap. Because in every government, development projects will always exceed the amount of revenue that the country has, and that is why they end up with a gap in borrowing. As I said, the issue is to rationalize what it is that you prioritize as your projects so that you're able to finance your budget. So the borrowing then shouldn't be to the extent that it is in many countries that are in debt distress. Now, what we are saying, since that is the logic that is used for county governments to be denied their revenue, then we should apply the same, that we are given the same space for both the allocation from the revenue, which is what we usually get, and we are saying as a percentage of the revenue that has been raised in the previous year, and we are proposing in this case 45%. And then, considering what the national government is borrowing, the county government should also be given the same window of 20% to fund their budget deficits for their development projects. So in essence, it's just what we're saying is that whatever you're applying at the national level, you should also apply the same principles at the county level. Now, to address the second question of why is it that the counties have a problem with adhering to the stipulated or recommended 30% by the PFM with regard to recurrent expenditure versus development. One of the reasons that our recurrent expenditure grows is human resource expenses, which have to do with the staff that we have in the counties. Now, we got functions that were devolved, and we did claim human resource. We also found human resource of the counties from the county authorities. Now, the challenge, like in this past financial year, if I could explain, the amount of money that the counties were given in additional revenue was less for most counties than that which would be required to just factor in basic requirements of law in terms of increases of salary, annual increases of salaries. And we raised it when we were coming to the Senate to look for the resources. So of course, if you do that 2-3 times, you will find that all counties then will end up spending a lot more than the 30%. So it is the only way to get the counties to have their 30% or less in recurrent expenditure, especially in human resource, is to increase the allocation that you're giving to the counties. But if you keep the allocation at a lower pace than the increase in recurrent expenditure, both when you factor inflation and they factor increased taxes, like right now we have increased taxes, and then you factor increased salary increment but that are mandatory by law, you will find that over the years, the cost of recurrent expenditure for counties will exceed the 30% threshold.
Chair, maybe before you give, and maybe he could also help you, because I know he's a finance person, because from your answer, what you are saying is actually not factual. You have said that what has been used to deny counties more revenue is how much government is borrowing. Well, the excuse that you may put
That is the excuse that the national government gives us when they are doing the CARA.
And I'm saying because your vice chair is a finance person, he knows that is not factual. What is factual is that is not borrowing, is debt financing. And it is also a fact, the Controller of Budget just released a report last week, but one, saying that we have now surpassed the 1 trillion mark in debt financing. And that is what has a bearing as to how much money then is available to the counties. The other thing that is factual, true, the cost of living is going up and inflation and all that, and wages will definitely go up. And I would want to hear from you, where is a place for own source revenue for county governments? Because we are now all competing for resources at the center, but we never hear any governor or even the council speak about own source revenue. And I believe the spirit of devolution was also to encourage counties even to compete amongst themselves in raising revenue. Part of the other reason, Governor, Chairperson, why counties are finding themselves in problems is unrealistic estimates of your own source of revenue. And you end up with very many pending bills. I'll give you a case example of a county that I know that the last financial year they raised about 2.1 billion shillings, and they have now estimated for the next financial year that they will raise 7.9 billion. And they will go ahead and procure and incur pending bills. Then that drives the demand for more resources more than probably the other issues of inflation and all that. Because if you have to factor in inflation, the other thing that is factual, and I say this with all due respect to the council, because I have sat in parliament as a chair of the budget and appropriations committee. Part of what is factored, and I'm certain even Senator Aaron or Senator Mugani would have bear me witness, the cost of inflation is always factored. Always.
Yeah.
So that's why I challenge you that on that particular aspect, what you are telling us is not factual.
I actually beg to differ, because you know very well that as much as we raise revenue in the country, sometimes we also borrow to pay debts. We borrow from A to pay B, or we roll over our maturities and use maybe domestic and convert, but one borrowing to pay another debt, and that happens, and it is normal in all counties. So I think we can't assume, if you look at how much money that the country collects vis-a-vis how much money that we're spending in development and how much we're paying in debt, you will see that what I'm telling you is factual. The second thing is, even in the national government, they have never achieved 100% of their revenue collection target. Half the time, and I come from a background of treasury, I was there for over 15 years. In all those 15 years, or over 15 years I was there was no day we said we had achieved 100% of our revenue target. We always get to, in fact, if you get to 85, 90%, it's considered a very good performance. So it is not unusual also to find the same in the country, in the county governments. And I have said on the issue, this I've said before in Senate, I think one of the things that would cure our pending bills, and pending bills, Chair, does not only apply to county governments. Whereas county governments have a fraction of our pending bills, I think our total pending bills are about 115 billion shillings. And out of that, you will find that one county will probably have 90, and the rest then have the spread of the little. And the largest bearer of the pending bills is the city of Nairobi, because of the previous local authorities and also the previous regimes. You will find that the national government's pending bills are in excess of 400 billion. So when we talk about pending bills and we talk about this financial management, let us be careful not to cast aspersions on the county governments at the expense or at the detriment of the expense of our reputation vis-a-vis the national, because Chair, some of us have the facts, and we will also respond with the facts. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Thank you very much for chairs. Issues raised, just add a few things. With all due respect, whether we call it debt financing or debt, it's our feeling that the national government is front-loading its share through debt. In that, when they borrow upfront and spend more on repaying debt, and when you come to the division of revenue, debt is used to explain why we can't get money, it's not fair. If you just even look at the current revenue share formula in the Constitution has provided a ceiling of 15% as counties